was a older man, say early 40s, very successful accountant by by his account, and he called me after he'd done a couple of workshops with me and said, "I'm thinking of spending £5,000 on this pickup artistry course. Do you think I should do it?" And my heart went out to him. This man was so sad, lonely, and felt so broken that he couldn't make a relationship, initiate and maintain a relationship, that he felt that a £5,000 course would help him in some way. And I steered him away from that. But that's the world we live in. And so I do have a bit of sympathy for the men. I also have a massive sympathy. I would definitely not like to be single now. I would hate it. I don't want to meet someone on a phone app. I mean, that's just me, the dinosaur, speaking. I want to meet someone on the dance floor. It's been very interesting. I've felt a little bit out of it because I've never been single on the South Sea. I've never been one of those guys. I've flirted my socks off, which I think is a very healthy thing to do. There's a boundary. There's a professional boundary, and I'm a great thing of like, we do need a little bit more structure. I have a child and vulnerable adults policy, and I know I'm self-employed and it's only me, but I still have it written down that I do not teach mixed groups of children and adults. I do not teach vulnerable adults if I feel that the class environment will demean them in any way.
Wow, okay, that's a great idea.
Yeah, it's stuff like that. I think there was a campaign, the Drink Aware campaign, sponsored some research. It was a couple of years back now, and they found that 70% of young people who went to a nightclub were sexually assaulted.
Oh.
The definition of sexual assault is deliberate physical contact with sexual intent. So basically, they're groped. And to see, 20-somethings who just want to go out and have a good time with their mates, and they have to wear running shorts under their skirts so they don't get sexually assaulted on the dance floor, it's outrageous. And in comparison, the South Sea is pure. It's fluffy in comparison to that. That's regular nightclubs. So as you can tell, I'm really, really mixed up about it. And I would like it to be different, and I would like things to be different, but sadly we have to work with what we've got. I believe salsa can be so much more than it ever was, which hopefully we'll have time to get to. But
yeah. So tell me, at the time, so you started teaching. A few questions again. I want to get to, when did you go full-time? And because you were one of the first to break out from learning from the Latinos, that's the truth. You were one of the first, Stephanie included, she's in that package. What was the reception like? As you said, you don't feel bad, and you shouldn't. I can say the same happened to me in Birmingham. That at one stage I started to teach. I felt a sense of feeling disloyal that I was teaching when I was taught by someone who was one of the first in Birmingham. But I just really want to ask you that. Was there any kind of reaction, and when did you, because I'm curious about Salsa Rapido and Salsa Street Beat. I know I'm asking many things, but I want to know where they came in.
I kind of get the vein of what you're asking. It's so first of all, let's pull out the race issue. I'm a white Englishman, and my internal stereotype of a white Englishman growing up in rural Kent, what the hell am I doing as a dance teacher? It's a massive insecurity, and has been. And you mentioned street beat salsa.
Was that insecurity for you?
there's no coincidence that if you look back at any flyer that I produced, and I've got a box load of them in the other room, throughout the year since the 1990s, you will not see a picture of me on it. I am not the face of it, and I've hidden behind the Street Beat Salsa Company. Sounds kind of big, and the Salsa Rapido method, the trademarked method. But a lot of that is, it's never been Alistair Sadler's dance company, because I don't feel my face fits, and that's been an inhibition for me throughout.
Oh, wow. I never knew
on
that.
the other side of that is teachings about communication, and the vast majority of the people that I teach have no connection with Latino culture. They are as fresh and naive about the whole thing as I was when I learned. And that gives me empathy and communication. And teaching is about hearing what you need to hear in a way that you need to hear it. So someone's skill with, say, Spanish or, isn't necessarily an advantage teaching a room full of English people from the home counties. A really good example of my fears was I was booked to do a corporate entertainment job at a Latin American investment bank in the city. This was back in the 90s. And it was going to be 400 people. And there was me, going to sit up in front of them and give them a cabaret class. And I was petrified. And the closer we got, every day I just got more and more nervous, and I started acting out and getting grumpy and all the rest of it, because I was going to be publicly humiliated. There was this, white English guy standing up in front of 400 successful Latinos, teaching them to do that. They're just going to rip me apart. Not a single one of them could dance. That's not true. There was one lady from Barcelona, and it was all the stereotype in my head. It was all my own insecurities playing out.
God, okay.
I also have to recognize that, I've had a guy at the top of the slope of the steps at the Cuban in Camden, which we taught about for 13 years. And he was Middle Eastern origin, but he looked at me and said, "You can't teach salsa. You're not Latino." And that was it. That was completely fixed in his mind. And I felt the offense. I felt it was triggering the shame that I experienced and all those insecurities. But on the way home, I realized one really important thing. The moment I'm not in a salsa club, the moment I'm not teaching salsa or dancing salsa, I fit in. And other groups do not have that privilege of an off switch.
Yeah, I suppose so. But it still doesn't mean that it's not. Still doesn't mean it's not nice to hear. Which is, if we're going to start saying that, I don't know. Yes, it's complicated, because if we say things like somebody shouldn't be teaching certain things, then all around the world there's so many things none of us would be doing.
Absolutely. I tend to use the analogy of soccer, football. Now, pretty much everyone played it, everyone dances. The English came along and codified it. We put the rule book on it. And due to our social economic connections throughout the world, soccer spread throughout the world. Are England the best team in the world?
No.
No, not since I was one. And so I think we have to recognize that salsa, obviously the term was coined in the 70s in New York, but the dance itself threads back through Cuba, through son, danzonette, contra dance, all those things, back to Europe or to rhythmically to Africa. To say, well, this is always been global in some sense, and I don't feel. I think it's gone beyond the criticism of appropriation. I think it's a very valid thing, because salsa has always been about melting pots, be it the conjunto and charanga formats in Cuba, the son, and of course the cultural melting pot in Cuba as well. Be it the Puerto Ricans, Cubans, but of course the North American jazz influence, Larry Harlow and those kind of people are the Andrea All-Stars. And that's another melting pot. And then it gets to London in the 80s. And then we've got this, London, Colombian, Afro-Caribbean, white British, another melting pot.
Yeah.
And I think we should be celebrating that. That's an amazing cultural thing. And the salsa scene has done it without, as far as I know, not a single penny of government investment. We haven't been, it's the money that's gone into propping up ballet and opera has not been spent on salsa. There we go, politics at last.
So I'm just making a note there. Tell me, when did you go full time? And I kind of know the concept, street beat salsa and salsa rapido. Tell me all about it.
It's really simple, really. As a teacher stroke promoter, we do a range of things, the Thames Salsa Cruise, the intensive courses, various different club nights. And so they are all run by, if you like, the company brand Street Beat Salsa. And Salsa Rapido is a very specific wedge of that, the Salsa Rapido method, which is my way of teaching, and it's an ethos as a way of teaching. It's permission to ask the question, why do we dance, and how can we get more people there quicker? And that was from the outset. I mean, the approach has changed over the years, but from the outset, it's like, how will I survive as a salsa teacher, given my own insecurities, blah, blah, blah. It's not just going to be about spending money on advertising. I've got to have something there that I perceive the competition didn't necessarily have. And that was this goal to go, okay, if you're learning, are we learning quickly? And you think there's some sort of, say, and this is no disrespect to them, but say a local authority classes. There were lots around in the 90s. And you did 10 weeks of basket weaving or whatever. And it was kind of obvious that the pace of the course was dictated by the slowest person on the course. Frustrating for anyone with talent, somewhat patronizing to anyone there, and anyone in the middle, well, whatever. You've got the money up front. They don't get the service. And there's nothing within that system that makes the teacher better next time. And as I said, on the London club scene, if I screw up, they don't come next week. If I'm rude or obnoxious or showing off, they don't come back next week. These days, it's reflected in TripAdvisor reviews.
Oh, wow.
2019, I've got the TripAdvisor Certificate of Excellence, the number of 5-star reviews of the one-day intensive course.
Cool. Which is, I know pre-COVID you were holding them at Bar Salsa.
Yeah, and post-COVID, we have dates on the system.
Ooh.
And last Friday I made a sale, which is kind of like the first sale since a long time. Anyway, about COVID, but yes, the Salsa Rapido course. To be honest, that one-day intensive course has informed my life in many ways. And
I didn't hear that, Alistair. It's done what? Sorry.
Sorry, it's informed my life.
Okay.
It's led me down a path. So first of all, it's a full-day intensive course. It was the first of its kind in the world. it's the longest running and most successful. For much of the time I've done it, the nearest competition was Edie, the salsa freak in Texas, going around doing her thing. In fairness, she was doing it in different cities. It's 5 hours of tuition, not including breaks. So it is a proper full day. That in itself requires a different skill set than a typical 1 hour class. So my teaching is different when I'm doing a 1 hour class as to when I'm doing a 5 hour course. You can take the people on a curve throughout the day. You can address their fears at the beginning. You can build up the skill set, write things in the right order. You can find the moments and keep them going. And when I started it, I think was 2003. I had no idea whether I could survive 5 hours of teaching in one go. Many people have crossed that bridge, those thoughts now. They go, can they survive 5 hours working on Zoom? And so it's a very similar thing. But back then, no one had done it. And I was smoking 40 cigarettes a day. And either side of the stage at South Soho, there were like little square speaker things. And by the end of the day, I would have an ashtray on each and a cigarette lit on each one. And I wouldn't smoke in the middle of the stage, but I'd have a puff at one end and then walk to the other and a puff at another end. And so, yeah, significant problems. But you can, if you get the shape right of the course. And the other big thing is the course engaging enough to make it seem like it's gone really quickly? That's the big thing. You need achievement and you need engagement. That led to me using a lot of humor and comedy and those kind of skills. Along the way, some sort of reasonably well-known comedians came on. Tony, what's his fame, was one of them. He's often on Radio 4, but he came along and I had a chat with him afterwards, and I said, what do you think about the humor? And he said, yeah, I think you got something there. You should take that forward. And so I went on a comedy course, 10-week comedy course, and learned to do stand-up. And since then, I've taken 4 shows to the Edinburgh Fringe.
Gosh.
Yeah, that's my hobby. I've got a gig tomorrow night, a Zoom gig.
I was going to say, on Zoom, wow.
Zoom at the moment. But the point was, comedy can teach salsa so much about crowd skills. Delivering a punchline and delivering a key piece of information, a concept you want them to take away, is identical. And that timing and the way you modulate your voice and the connection of the room, the way you hold the room is an equivalent skill set. It's also about boundaries. If you overstep the line as a comedian, you get heckled, you get moved off. If you overstep the line as a salsa teacher, same problem. Or they just don't come back. So that gave me a leg up on the skill set. From that, I realized that there was quite often 1 or 2 people in the room who had booked themselves onto a course as a kind of internal challenge. They'd a cliche, not anyone specific, but a typical example of a man would be someone who'd had a horrible experience at school discos, had the mick take out of him throughout his 20s, got married, had a horrendous first dance, and his wife has never forgiven him since. And then suddenly, for their 10th wedding anniversary, she's bought him a 1-day intensive course gift voucher. And she turns up, dragging him along. They arrive late because he's so resistant that he's found any excuse not to come. They have no conscious awareness of this, and they turn up, and okay, she gives me a look, and that look is, you fix him. And that's what I do. That's what I do. I understand where he's coming from, my experience growing up in Kent, my alienization to the scene and not being part of a dance scene, the fact that I don't speak Spanish, can be turned around into I have a greater connection in my mind to the rhythm, because I'm not distracted by the lyric. It means nothing to me. And I understand where he's coming from. I understand that fear, and I can hold him. And and he's looking at himself in the mirror, getting ready to go to the course, and he's going, "Oh my God, I'm a bald middle-aged man." And he gets there, and it's run by a bald middle-aged man. That makes a difference. That makes a difference. And I enjoy making fun of the fact I am the least looking salsa teacher on the planet. And then again, that's what Mario would be, and he looks pretty similar, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, he looks pretty similar. So, gosh, I've just lost my thought for 1 second. I just had one pertinent question It'll
come back.
Yeah, to ask you. So I think I was interrupting you anyway. So sorry about that.
Well, the interesting thing about this sort of group environment, but with one or two people, another example of that, perhaps if you'll indulge me, is an older lady, early 60s, and she was there with a close friend that they've been friends for ages, a guy, and I could tell from the outset that she was really uncomfortable. And so what I tend to do is if I have the opportunity, have a little chat with them beforehand. I personally try to meet and greet every single person as they arrive, rather than just let them queue up outside. The class had already started, so I couldn't do that. So I invited to dance with her, and we did some things about posture and that, and I could just feel her resistance to it. And she got through to the first break, and she sat down, and I could see her, she wasn't going to get up again. So I went over and had a little chat, and she'd lost her husband 6 months ago. He died. And this was her friends with the greatest, with a lovely, kind-hearted intentions, who felt it was time for her to get out there and have some fun. Not sexual fun, but just to get out life back again. So they basically so they put her on this course. She was not ready for that. She was not ready for it in any way. And so I felt a kind of when someone is vulnerable to me, I used to feel very vulnerable back. It was kind of like it triggered my own vulnerabilities. I think I have to tell you about that with your beautiful interview with Mario B. I was very moved by it.
Well, I was moved by what he said. I literally, it blew me away, and it still does, what happened to him. But anyway.
It was a beautiful piece of work, and my heart goes out to you for experiencing that. But I think it's something you can really be proud of as a piece of journalism.
Thank you. You're going to get me emotional. Sorry. Yeah.
Of course, that was my goal. I thought, well, if Mario can make you cry, then I've got to go one better on the salsa teacher.
Thank you.
So this kind of led to a realization that I wasn't as good as I would like to be with vulnerable people. And so I started having some therapy myself. And I got really interested in the psychology of it, because the psychology of therapy and the psychology of dance, they overlap hugely.
Okay.
And so I'm now just started my final year of training as a counsellor, and I've been seeing clients for a year.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So big shout out to the Nightingale Cancer Support Charity, where I volunteer, and if anyone wants
what are they called? Sorry, say that again.
The Nightingale Cancer Support Charity, and they support anyone who's been affected by cancer. It doesn't have to be themselves. And I've learned a lot about resilience through working with the clients there. It seems a continuation from the salsa teaching into the comedy, into the one-to-one talking therapy thing. And I love the idea of counselling in the week and salsa teaching. The only sadness is I've been able to call myself a full-time salsa teacher since 1998. it's, although I started
It's funny you say that, because that was the question that I wanted to ask you when I lost the thought, is because I did answer before when you went full time, and it's really interesting, because I want to be frank. I want to ask you about this. In one of the interviews I did, it was with a young gentleman called Juan Matos, and we were talking about having a career, a full-time successful career in salsa. And I believe, no, I'm going to take it. I was just about to say, I believe that it's very difficult, and that's wrong. What I should say was, I strived for a long time to try and have a career full-time, as I thought it looked easy, and there were many people that were doing well. Anyway, so with this gentleman, he is, stroke was, at the top of the game, and he just he made the comments of, and it really threw me. He made the comments of, how many people do you know in salsa who have retired, or who are able to retire from salsa? And I was he made me think, and it's something that I really intend to ask everyone. And I know that there's differentiations, because in the times of people, and you're probably going to be in this part, we've all heard the stories of when Ramiro, Elder, and them were teaching. They were making a lot of money.
Yeah.
And obviously, you've been around, not being rude, you've been around a long time as well. Yes, I suppose the question is, so I don't want to know the amount. Have you done well? Have you seen, obviously there are changes. What do you think's changed? I'm assuming it's because there's so many people teaching. Tell me your view.
I have done well, and I've done well for two specific reasons. One is innovation, not following the crowd. Salsa Fusion method, with following on from Salsa Fusion's lead, I give them credit too, to push the boundaries, to be a little bit different. I don't run a club night, I run a cruise on the river. It's just
I remember that. Are you still doing that as well, pre-COVID?
Pre-COVID, yeah, up until last year. That's been going since 1998, I think. Yeah, it's, we had the 21st anniversary cruise, and it was just crazy. Same boat. How long it can continue, because anyway, there's political things with the current mayor, but we shall find out. But the big innovation, I was struggling. I was teaching salsa 3 or 4 nights a week, earning a few quid here, a few quid there, after the expenses, and just barely making a living. Then started to get a bit experimental, and did the I was getting kind of frustrated with it, so I decided to do a demonstration thing and get onto this lovely convention bandwagon, Congress bandwagon that was going around. And to be honest, I was just jealous. I was jealous of Super Mario and Susanna and all those guys out there doing it. And so I put together this routine with a mop and an office chair.
I saw it. I was there.
You were there? Wow.
Yeah, I was there.
You were there.
Yeah.
We were talking about Gene Kelly earlier, and the only other person I know who's done a routine with a mop was the sailor scene. His famous tap dancing sailor scene is with a mop. And it was designed as a routine to, it was never going to be a superstar dance routine, because I got this clunky look chair on stages that slope and have strange rubber surfaces and stuff like that. So it had to be the sort of, unusualness and thing, which sort of lent itself to the middle act, because there's only I thought there was only so many times you can have, interesting pose, 20 bars of footwork, 3 salsa moves, another interesting pose, the kind of thing I'm talking about. They can get a bit samey after a while. And so I thought I'd do something different and see what can happen. And of course, doing a solo demonstration meant I could practice on my own and give it the rehearsal time that, the best I could. Saying that, I spent more time building the mop and chair thing with a frame around the jacket. Her name was Catno, by the way, as in catalogue number, and she lives under the bed in the spare bedroom.
Okay.
Still in the suitcase, ready for the next invitation to do the gig.
Okay.
I took that to the 5th Salsa Congress in Holland, and I took it up to Sweden in the Salsa camp. That year I did a talk at the British Salsa Congress in Bognor, but I didn't do the demonstration there.
Are you sure?
I did a talk called "Is the Count Killing Salsa?" But that was the year Latin Madness was in, and it was interesting. That show blew me away. That show must come back. It's better than anything I've seen in the West End. That show has to come to London.
Well, that's what was in the rest of that interview, is us talking about Latin Madness too. So I agree with you. It's an amazing educational piece with comedy as well.
Yes.
And as you said,
wasn't it? It was threaded together with 2 stand-ups.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what helps you to remember the story as well, is the comedy.
Yeah. I think the other thing was, because each number was done by almost a different dance company, it gave it so much more variety of dance compared to, for instance, some of the tango shows I've seen, which seem to come along like London buses. But I did it up at the British Congress in Skegness in the following January.
Maybe that's where I saw it then. Okay.
That was it, yeah. And it was introduced by the late David Melendez. And he hadn't been briefed. So from his perspective, it was just this cleaner had come on stage to mop it up. And he just talked and talked and talked. And I couldn't talk back because I didn't have a microphone. It would have been great to get a bit of banter, but that was before my comedy days. And so I've got this sort of video of like 10 minutes of banter of him basically going, "What the hell's happening?" And me cleaning the stage until eventually it's like, get off the stage. I want to do my act. And then I did it. And I remember when I had no idea, because I'd only done it 4 or 5 times. And there's a sad story and a happy story. Which would you like first?
Sad
story. I can't remember what night I was performing on, but there was a fair bit of social dancing. I think there had been at least one night of just social dancing. Whereas from anyone's perspective, I was just the guy who'd attended the Congress. And I was getting turned down for dances right, left and center. I was scanned. They do that barcode thing where they look you up and down and just go, no way. And I wasn't, batting above my game. I was just looking for people who were smiley and happy and just, you can dance, let's have a dance. No, fine. It's supposed to be a Congress, Then I went on stage, did my performance, and then I was fighting them off with a stick. Everyone
Seriously?
wanted to the guy, not my wife with me, but it was dance-wise.
Yeah.
I was somehow elevated to this elite status. It turns my stomach. It turned my stomach, and that was the last Congress I did. I found it elitist, and it was like being in the cool gang in the playground, and it had nothing to do with salsa as far as I was concerned. But it clearly did. So that's the sad story. The happy story is when the act was in two halves. The first act is kind of like this guy waking up in a showroom, and he's a cleaner, and he's constructs in this slightly confusing, bizarre way out of a broken office chair and a mop and his jacket a person, a mannequin. And then the music changes, and bang, it breaks into salsa. And I dance fairly limited, but it starts off with a couple of revolving cross bodies. Pause for a moment. That I learned from Mario B at Turnmills, Salsa University at Turnmills, and I think it was his first trip to the UK. And I remember him saying, "Oh, you guys don't know a revolving crossbody?" And I remember his shock on his face. Once we learnt it, boom, that was it. So that was the crossbody invasion. Anyway, back to the thing, and I broke into this thing with a couple of revolving crossbodies, and the crowd just went, "Hey!" I think there was a couple of thousand people there or something, and it was fantastic. And I got that, and I kind of understood whether people who get up on stage, what they get from it. I get that, and I respect it. And I see clips like of Mo when he's comparing it. And I go, yeah, I can honestly say in that small, brief window of opportunity, I stood on the stage and I did my thing. But it's not actually my thing that much. I'd much rather do a comedy gig, much more fun. Okay. So, yeah, that's the story of Capno and the mop and chair demo. I got an email just a couple of years back, and it was a guy going, "Sorry, you don't know me, but I was at the thing, and I would really love to do that demonstration of that thing." And he was just, and I don't know who this guy was, but I have so much respect for him that he had that courtesy to ask.
Wow.
Plus, Salsa Rapido and Mambalsa are trademarks, and I've had to defend a number of times because people have cut and pasted the Salsa Rapido one-day intensive course somewhere in the country. It just goes.
It's quite interesting you say that, actually, because I know, you know how people talk, and I have heard that how Salsa Rapido does very well. So are you saying that people were stealing it because it had such a reputation? Is that what you're saying?
Hope it's because of the reputation. I love that idea. I think it's also, you can't even consider a full day course without it coming up on Google. So
so it's a success
also,
then.
It's
the rating.
It's the only car in the market, really. So if they're going to copy an intensive course, it's going to be mine. So fair enough. I don't resent anyone doing an intensive course. Where I get a little bit troubled with it is when it's not an intensive course and it's just a couple of 1 hour classes, and you see on the thing there it only lasts 3 hours and there's a half-hour Q&A session. You don't get half an hour of Q&A in an intensive course. If you do, you haven't told them the right stuff in the first place. And it's just like there's a huge difference between 5 hours of tuition and a couple of 1 hour classes strung together. And that's not knocking any salsa teacher. It's happened enough times to say it's not any one competition. I don't even know who the competition is now. I think possibly Maria, she does a good job. And the guys over in West London. But who knows, post-COVID, who's going to be left standing?
Exactly. And you hit on something again that I wanted to ask you, because I know that you were there. So you were in the class when Mario B, taught crossbody lead. Again, I would love your opinions. I was dancing before crossbody lead. I remember when I came to London, I was dancing with everyone, the Colombians, the Cubans, the English, the British. I was dancing with everybody. I didn't care. I was dancing Cali style, everything. But I remember when the crossbody lead came, that wasn't such a big thing, such a big resistance. I think the resistance I felt was more alongside with crossbody lead. what was attached to that was when, I think it was the styling for the ladies. I think that was a bigger issue for men and women than the crossbody lead. So obviously you've seen the change. Do you, because in my opinion, don't get me wrong, I love dancing crossbody lead now, but when I reflect back, I believe that was one of the biggest damages to the scene. Or maybe I'm just being a romantic. Or as Leon Rose said when I interviewed him, everyone looks back and says that it was better then. What's your view and perception of then and now with the crossbody lead, and your thoughts?
I regret the loss of the original London style that reflected the communities that were dancing at the time. And I think the introduction of the crossbody style was the introduction of internationalism, which, when I look back at it now, that is running hand in hand with the internet, you know. And even if we had have maintained the sort of London style, it would have got wiped out by YouTube clips. Yeah. So it was inevitable that it was going to change in hindsight. It breaks my heart to say. I think the real fundamental problem that I have with crossbody style is not the crossbody moves. It's twofold. It's the ethos of teaching that came with it. It's big line-up classes dancing to counts instead of connecting to the music. There are people who get through to into what they think is intermediate advanced level, and they don't know what a clave rhythm is. They can't hear a timbal of a conga. They don't understand the instrumental of the band. How many advanced dancers, maybe not advanced, but intermediate dancers, can name more than 5 salsa bands? And so
you're spot on.
If you just count at people, you're giving them a message. You're saying the music is unimportant. If you count at people, you're saying the beat is so structured that you can't play around with it. You can't push it, pull it. There is also a message of conformity. And you mentioned the styling, you know, and as soon as you said that, I thought, oh, light bulb, hair flick, body roller wave, or whatever it's called these days. And you just go, wow, okay. And that's happening on autopilot. It's a kind of internalized choreography that's not, you know, if someone wants to put their arm in the air and go, yeah, that's brilliant, that's awesome, that's salsa. They are expressing themselves emotionally on the dance floor in time with the music, and it's great. If someone's going, and every crossbody inside turn, I'm going to do a light bulb hair flick body wave. That's repression. That's saying, I am not a unique individual. I am just a clone. I am just this cardboard cutout of what, you know, they think society thinks salsa should be. And we've seen it with the, you know, the costumes at congresses. You know, there was back when I was doing my congresses, it seemed like every girl was wearing like a handkerchief with two straps on it. And it's like, you know, and it didn't matter where you went. I did a 10-week performance course at the Royal College of Music. And I'm going to get into trouble with this because my wife is a professional musician and she plays violin. But and it's down there in Kensington, and I went there, and every single girl in the college, and I couldn't find an exception to this, I'm certain there were, had this long straight hair. That's what you did, because if you're a predominantly white middle class home counties girl and you go to a music college, then you've got to have the hair. And that was it. And I get that need to conform and all the rest of it, but we've got to look for the individuality, because without it, all we're doing is conveying choreography. how many times can you initiate a choreography and the dancer will just complete it through anticipation?
Yeah.
They're not doing the move I was leading, they're doing the move that's in their head.
Yeah, that's true.
And what we need is presence and rapport that goes beyond the choreography. I mentioned one of the, and this is, I hope this isn't too heavy for the podcast, but I mentioned the sort of overlap between psychotherapy and dance psychology, and the core conditions of psychotherapy, as put forward by Carl Rogers back in the 70s. His 3 core conditions are empathy. And empathy, how is it for the other person? If you then make positive decisions based on the empathy, you get consideration. So the considerate dancer is the dancer that goes, what's going to make this dance as good as I can do for you? And once you value that, dancing with a beginner improver is no longer a frustration thing, which tends to get pushed to the side, and we'll have the beginners down one end, and we'll have the good dancers up DJ. Not that ever happens. I've got a story about that as well. I won't dance with that guy there because of how he looks. Oh, but now he's been on stage, therefore.
Yeah.
And so empathy is core to the way I teach, and I present it as consideration, but that's what it is. Synchronization, and the synchronization, the core conditions, empathy, congruence, being straight, being absolutely straight with it. If I'm dancing with a beginner, I'm dancing with a beginner. They know it, I know it, it's okay. And if my job is not to kind of pretend that they're not a beginner and challenge them too far and just go, oh, well, you're doing really well, let's try a triple spin. Oh, well, you're doing really well, let's try a quadruple spin. And I just see it over and over again where you get some good-looking guy on the dance floor and a less experienced girl, and they want to dance together, and he's showing her, he's teaching her on the dance floor. No, he's not. He's patronising the shit out of her. he's trying to be some macho. You're getting a bit of feedback. Is that okay? Yeah. He's getting some fix out of it. Sorry, there's a bit of a feedback loop going on. But it's all about, you know, I'm the big daddy figure. You're just a girl. And the girls play along with it, going, oh, you can show me some of your moves. It'll be so lovely. And they think they're going to have a relationship based on that imbalance in it. You know, it's not going to happen. You know, unless you've got a real thing for narcissists, because you're going to find them by the bucket load, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's empathy is given, straightness. I want to be able to, as an experienced dancer. It's interesting you say that, because I hate the term advanced dancer. I hate it because I don't want to be one of those elite dancers on stage. Just turn that might help.
I can't hear the feedback, by the way. It's fine.
Oh, that's okay. If you can't hear it, then it's okay. Right.
Sorry,
I'll ignore it. I'll ignore it. So yeah, so straightness, being straight with each other. If you're dancing with a beginner who's barely got a footwork pattern and a crossbody terrifies them, then my job as an experienced dancer is to make them feel so good about themselves, so amazing that they had a dance with an experienced dancer who was, you know, giving them the attention and keeping them in a level that they were comfortable with without patronizing. And I want to be that dancer. They come back in 2 or 3 years and say, I had my first dance with you and it was amazing. And throughout, this is one of the things we've got to be careful of what we bring in from other cultures. But what I think one of the 2 great things that you bring in from the Cuban salsa scene, the holiday sort of salsa scene, is what is the sense of fun? And I think that's still with us in Rueda.
I'm so glad you say that. I agree so much.
And the other thing is, women go on holiday and they go to Havana and they get their socks danced off and they feel amazing. And I see them and they turn up at my class and they're absolute beginners. Yeah. I'm okay with that, because one is I'm a beginners teacher, but secondly, they were made to feel so good about salsa and about dancing that they've turned up in my class, and it's my duty, my responsibility to keep that passion alive for them, not to put a wall up and say you're not good enough to be in this group, not to shame them. I know of a teacher, I can't remember, I'm not going to say who it is, and if a guy had his arm hanging down in the class, he would get a bright red handbag and put it on the arm of the guy so that he couldn't do that. I mean, that is shaming.
Gosh.
And so, yeah, it's there's all sorts of things. You know, there's enough horror stories. We don't need to keep that thing. And if we just go, okay, what's being straight all about? Then we lose that a whole bunch of problems that have been inherent. And the other thing is unconditional positive regard. That's the third core condition. I believe that anyone who walks into my class has the possibility of learning this dance. I've worked with disabled people, I've worked with dyspraxic people, I've worked with people whose inhibitions are terrible. Women recovering from sexual violence.
Cool.
Challenging themselves by putting themselves in a position where they're in physical contact with not just me, but every other guy in the room. Wow. And it's my job to create that space where they can feel comfortable and accept that challenge and maybe help them move it on to the next level. So, you know, okay, I know that I'm a bit happy clappy about these things, but if you put those core conditions at the middle of things, then some of the horror stories, and we've had salsa teachers who have been, you know, they're on the sex offenders register. We've had a salsa teacher who was locked up for treason, of all things. We've had...
Really?
Yeah. I taught for
it. Okay. I don't think I know that one. Okay.
You know, there's bad stuff on the salsa scene. It's not a perfect world, but you know, I just want to be true to myself, and I don't care who looks at salsa and goes, "Oh, it's a sleazy thing." It's you know, it's part of the jinetero culture, you know, extension of that transported over.
But the sleaze everywhere. I do find, gosh, in my opinion, the sleaze everywhere. If you want to, you know, we've seen it. If you're training to be a gymnast, people have been abused by their coaches. If you want to be an actor or actress, you know, a rock star. At the end of the day, there's lots of sleaze there. You know, it's everywhere, and I don't think salsa is any better, any worse. I think again, the same as every other scene, it's definitely to the advantage of the male. That is a fact. However, I do think what has changed, and this is something that I am actually raising, is you know, there's conversations now about the clothing that the women are wearing or people's promotion and social media. And some person challenged me about it, and I took the challenge, and I just said, personally, I am not offended by the way women are dressing or advertise themselves now. I think for me, what's more interesting is that the women know that game, and that's why they're doing it. What's more interesting is that promoters are employing these people on the basis of what they look like, or the fact of, because they have a big following, they know that they can use them. And you know, as I said, for me, I'm not personally bothered by it, but someone did say to me that I should be, you know, so it's made me kind of, you know, think about that. But yeah, I do agree with you. It is everywhere. I don't think salsa is any different. I think, sorry that I'm talking so much. I think my only concern is people are getting work on their popularity or on their sexuality, sexiness, more than on sex appeal, that's the word, thank you, rather on what they teach their worth. And I think that, but you know, is that a sign of the times? As you said, it's post social media.
Well, I think there has been a shift since the millennium towards a culture that values how it looks rather than how it feels. For me, my dancing is all about how it feels for me and how it feels for my partner. I don't care how we look. I really have no interest. I'm not dancing for an imaginary audience or an imaginary judge who's going to criticize and shame me if I get a move wrong. I'm dancing for my partner, and I want them to have the best experience. But culturally, I think we've shifted, and it started with a crossbody thing. With no criticism towards the teachers, we were naive to what was happening. You know, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, crossbody inside, crossbody outside, light bulb, hair flick, body roll.
I love the whole order of that. Okay, yeah.
Yes, yeah. Carolina she used to teach, and one of the managers at South of Soho. She was saying, she'd always say, pick the apple, bite the apple, polish the apple, throw the apple away. Yeah. That used to annoy the hell out of me, because you would always polish the apple before you bit it, and I'm going, no, it's the wrong way around. Anyway, I think that there is the big opportunity we have is at some point the outward looking, the choreography, the staginess, the sort of selfie culture that we have is going to come to an end. And it may well have done so with COVID. What seemed to be building long before COVID, with things like Me Too, Black Lives Matter, but also a massive £3 billion global industry of well-being. And if dance positions itself not with a sort of, you know, I don't want to offend anyone's belief system, but not with a sort of pseudoscience end of things, but with core science is going, you will get the benefits of dancing are not just getting a bit fit and passively meeting someone, but they are cathartic release, this sense. Partner dancing can be a way to model building, maintaining, and dissolving relationships that could have helped that accountant. And in the right context well, I know that it's helped ladies recovering from sexual violence. It can help the narcissistic men, the guys who have become the misogynists and players and lead very unhappy lives because of it. Dance can give them that performance thing. It can give them the alpha male status if that's what they want. But if the dance scene values the relationship, then the way that they become the top dog is to show respect to the people they're dancing with. And that works both ways. That works totally both ways. Another aspect to this, of course, is we're talking in a sort of gender binary way. And of course, the world has moved on. No one's thinking in a gender binary way anymore. We've got the whole trans debate happening at the moment. Let's lighten it. I was doing a cabaret class, a kind of up and dancing fun thing for the organisers of all the Pride events around the country.
Lovely.
Yeah, to be honest, I got the strong impression that the manager of South of Soho at the time was kind of like, drop me in it, let's get this, teaching that. So in my little group, and they were a bit well tanked up and we were going to have some fun, there was beautiful drag queens, there were bears, there were every shape, size, denomination, cross-gender, trans, this. I don't know who was the plus on the LGBTQI plus thing. Because they represented every aspect of it. They were the organization. And I did my usual thing on stage, and they got that, and we got them. I got them partnered up, and I think I used a phrase, "God, you guys just sort yourselves out."